Let me tell you this, the wolf that is on the hill is never as hungry as the wolf that is climbing the hill.
Flip the switch.
You have to start doing the things that nobody else is willing to do if you want the things that no one else has. You want to talk about science? Let's talk about science. Energy is neither created nor destroyed. But here's the thing, there's potential energy and there's kinetic energy. Too many of you are living in a potential energy. It's time to move into kinetic energy and start running, not walking, running after your goals. All it takes is one. That one choice, that one decision, that one commitment, that one extra email, that one extra phone call. That is what's going to change the entire trajectory of your life. All it takes is one. Are you ready to break through to become unconquerable? Message me. Let's get to work today. If you enjoy my podcast, please support me by buying my book, Resonate, Principles of Peak Performance, available on Amazon and at theresonatebook.com. Also, please be sure to like, subscribe, and share my page. Thank you. Hey, welcome to the Unconquered podcast. I have with me today an awesome, exciting special guest, Alex Dufresne. Alex is also an author and works for Game Changer Publishing, which is the amazing publisher of my book and many other books, successful books. And Alex, first off, I just want to thank you for coming on. You know, from author to author, I can empathize that writing a book is not easy, and you wrote yours before mine, and I know that you have a special mission in your heart. It's geared a little bit more towards women, so I will admit I have not read it. I do need to pick it up and read it, and I also would like to share it with my wife. But can you tell us a little bit about your book and what inspired you to write it?
Yes, absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I'm excited. I'm excited to be on here and share a little bit about the story and talk with you. So, yeah, I started writing my book when I was 15 years old. So, it wasn't meant to be a book. That's usually, I think, what people would say a lot about when you let God write your story. It usually ends up not being the story you expected. So, mine physically was a story that was written into a book. So that was kind of funny there. But yeah, I started writing when I was 15 and I had no intention of it becoming a book. But the reason I was writing is I was just going through typical teenage girl stuff. So just all these different things. And I just had a hard day at school. And so I think I was a sophomore in high school at the time. And I wrote it down, just my thoughts. I wrote down my thoughts and kind of just processing through and what I felt like God was doing. And the way that it was written was almost as if, I was teaching someone how to go through what I was going through, even though I was 15 and I didn't know what I was going through. I didn't know how to get through it or how to feel about it. And I say this in my book, but I'm like, I don't know why, but I opened up Google Docs on my computer. At the time, I was in a computers class at school, and I think we were learning about Google Docs, so that's probably why it happened, but I like to believe it was God that was like, "Open up Google Docs," and I did. I started typing, and, yeah, I was typing, like, teaching someone how to go through and process what I was going through and then turn to God through that. So, I'd always believed in God, but really started making my faith my own, throughout high school years and just wrote it down. I shared it with my mom. I'm really close with my mom, and so I just read it to her, and I was like, crying before, whatever, just processing, going through the stuff. It was emotional, and I read it to her, came back in the room, and I was just like, the best way I could describe it is I had this peaceful confidence. So I was just like, okay, whatever that was, it's done. So I grabbed my computer, brought it in my mom's room, showed her, and with tears in her eyes, she was like, Alex, this has to get out to people. Like, this is not just for you. This is going to help someone else your age or someone else in your same situation. And so from there, I just started praying about it and I started writing more and more and just got more assurance and confirmation from God that it was meant to be a book and it was meant to get out to the world. And so I published in May of this year, May 2nd, and with Game Changer Publishing, which I now work for, which is such a blessing in itself. And yeah, so that's a little bit about the story.
And so I think what you did was so important. Like you, struggling artist, right, or author, I do believe writing is a form of art. So
Yeah.
I my book is not my main source of income. Actually, my healthcare consulting, technology business is, and it's interesting that you bring up the teenage girl stuff because I think unfortunately there's a certain portion of our population, the generation above us, who was brought up differently, and all this to say some of my clients are in the mental health space. And so what I'm doing for my clients is helping their businesses negotiate better reimbursement rates with the insurance payers. But a lot of research goes into that. And as I'm researching these statistics on mental health, it was just a couple days ago that the suicide rate, and not just the suicide rate itself, but if I'm remembering right, it is 60% of our youth right now, our youth in the United States, have reported that they have seriously contemplated suicide over the last 12 months.
Mm,
That's more than half, 60%.
yeah.
So 6 out of 10 teenagers,
Yep.
and unfortunately, it's even like preteens as well. There's been headlines about even younger children in elementary school committing suicide. I know when I was in elementary school, I didn't even really know what suicide was.
Yeah. Me too.
And it's a different day and age. And I'm not here to like point any fingers and say like, oh, like it's XYZ's fault. Really, I don't care whose fault it is. It's just such an important, it's a crisis. And even without reading your book, but just knowing you and hearing you talk, it seems like your target audience is geared to that kind of teenage and young adult um, fan base. Is that a fair assumption?
Yes, absolutely. I really had, felt that God put on my heart that it was teenage girls specifically. And I think I became a little bit narrow minded in that of this is for teenage girls. But the second it released, I had response from so many different ages, which has just been so cool to see. And women that are, moms or women that are grandmas or, whatever age they are, they all relate back to I was a teenage girl before. And so hearing my words was almost like a lot of them had said that it was like hearing my own words and my own emotions and taking me back to when I was in high school and insecure and wanting a boyfriend or not knowing who I was or having friend drama and all of this stuff, like all those things. And so it takes us back because we all relate on that and we all were teenage girls once. And so it absolutely it was mainly geared for teenage girls. That was when I wrote it. That was when I I really thought that this was all going to come to be, but I would say that it's not really just for teenage girls. I think it's for anyone that just wants to know God and learn about God and just grow in relationship with him. And I think that what you said just about the suicide and in mental health crisis and all of that, it's rising so crazy. And it's crazy how common it is nowadays. And it's heartbreaking, but I really truly believe that we all have such a powerful voice in sharing our stories and encouraging each other that your life is worth it and that we all bring value to this world. And I think that in a social media world, how prevalent social media is, the best way I could describe it is we have the world at our fingertips, and I don't think God ever designed for us to have the world at our fingertips. I think it's overwhelming. It's very
Mhm.
overwhelming. We're not supposed to know what's supposed to happen. Don't worry, don't be anxious about tomorrow. Today has enough trouble of its own. We're seeing not just our troubles, but the world's troubles and everyone's troubles. And so it is overwhelming. It's heavy, but also in the same time, I always like to see the glass half full rather than half empty, right? Like,
Mhm.
okay, social media, the world is at our fingertips, but that gives us permission to get the message of Jesus out to the world. And so while it can be overwhelming, we have the power in our hands to use that for good and not to overwhelm or bring comparison up more or to affect people negatively, but to really impact their lives and lead them to Jesus. So
Yeah, it's, so much to unpack there. It's interesting that you bring up the social media phenomenon, um, mainly because when I was getting certified as like a high performance coach, first thing, literally like one of the first things that we were taught and challenged to do was either to deactivate all of our forms of social media or at least to delete the apps off our phone and
mm,
to, if we really needed to use it, to time block a certain time of day after we've gotten our highest priority task complete to check our social media, and it would be on our laptop or desktop computer, not on our cell phone scrolling.
yeah,
And the other thing is the gentleman who came up with the idea of what they now deem the doom scroll. So if you've noticed, like on all the forms of social media, there's no end to the. You never have to hit next page. You just
yeah,
scroll, and he actually resigned from. I think it was Google actually, even though Google still has the next page, because he started to realize the consequences of what the doom scroll might
yeah,
do to people's minds, and there is a neuroscience and neurochemical reaction getting on social media. I'm sure most people have seen The Social Dilemma by now, but if you haven't, it's a great documentary on Netflix
yeah,
that kind of goes into more detail there. Uh, and what's tough is, as a business owner and as an entrepreneur, um, glass half full, social media is a great outlet to market organically without having to pay like an ad agency when you're on kind of a tight budget. And so I use social media to market my services. And I went through a time period, even though I've been trained not to do, and I still fell victim of making a post, going to my LinkedIn, going to my Facebook, going to my Instagram, going to my TikTok, and obsessing over how many likes, how
yeah,
many shares, how many comments. And it drains you. And I really can't imagine what life really is like a teenager anymore. And I guess where I'm bringing that back full circle is, I think your book can be impactful to parents, to grandmas, even to fathers. I'm a girl dad, and to understand what is going through my daughter's mind,
mm-hmm,
because there can be a disconnect just based on the technology and based on the differences of what's going on in the world. And I think it's important for parents to have an empathy and an understanding of, hey, I may not necessarily agree or like this, but it's the reality in which I live. I might as well be prepared.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think there's generational gaps in like it's the way that we've grown up is so different. And even my generation, I mean, I'm 22 right now, so I was a teenager not that long ago. But when Instagram first came out and all of that, like I think I had my first Instagram account probably when I was in 7th or 8th grade,
Wow.
which honestly, I feel like that age is even younger nowadays, of kids having social media even younger. I just wasn't even really, I don't even know if my parents allowed me to initially, but it was probably like 7th or 8th grade. And then high school is when I really started to realize, oh my gosh, like this is like, I'm comparing myself. Like my
Mhm.
life is not like these people's lives. They look so happy. Why does everyone else have these things? Why do their bodies look like that? Why do they have a relationship and I'm not in a relationship? Why do they have so many friends and I don't? I have like 3 friends. Like all these things, this comparison, and it becomes like this, my life sucks. Like you sit there and you're like, geez. Or when it comes to, clothing, I mean, as a girl, as a teenage girl specifically, and you'll know this with your daughter, like your physical appearance, it matters, and that affects you very much. And so just like the body image and identity, and who you see in the mirror, it's usually not who other people see when they look, right? It's a completely different image. You see yourself in such this negative light. And I truly do believe a lot of that is social media and comparison, and seeing all these other people and saying, well, they're not built like me, like something's wrong with me. When in reality, it's we're all unique. We're all made, in God's image. And when God sees us, he sees perfection. That's the title of my book. Like, he sees perfection. That's the reason for it. And my subtitle, it's trusting that what God sees is all that matters. That's the truth. Like, that is what matters. It's not what the world sees. It's not that. And my book isn't just about, social media and body image and stuff, but it's about all these things mentally. Okay. What God sees, what God hears your thoughts. All what he sees is all that matters. Sure, you feel broken. Sure, you feel lost. Sure, you feel alone. But what's the higher truth? You are never too broken. You are never lost. He's always with you. And, God loves you, right? Like, you're never too far gone. He's there, and when he sees you, he does see that perfection, because he sees you through his perfection, which is perfect, or through his perspective, which is perfect.
And I'm so glad you brought that up, because it's something that men struggle with too. I've beaten obesity in my life, actually twice, and there was a time period where in college I was probably, I don't know the right term, but gym addicted, or had a gym addiction.
Yep.
And when I was in junior high, I actually developed. Now, I didn't have to seek help. My mom kind of got on, saw it, and helped me, and I was. It could have been worse, but I developed, what do they call it? A food. I wasn't like bulimic, but I was like halfway. I was becoming anorexic. I was literally like starving myself,
Yeah.
because I started in 7th grade at 205 pounds and 5 foot flat. So I was a very large kid. And 7th grade was the year where I started really uh, becoming more interested in girls. And look, I actually believe that your physical appearance, to a certain extent, to the extent of health, matters.
Yeah.
Like, I do, like gluttony is a sin. Um, and God doesn't want us to be obese and unhealthy. At the same token, he doesn't want us to be so obsessed with our bodies
Right.
that all of our energy goes into how we look from a vanity perspective, because
Yeah.
vanity is also a sin, right? So like most things in life, it's a healthy moderation, and it's finding that balance between the two.
Yeah.
And the reason that I struggled and became, for a short time, I guess, anorexic, is because even though I got down to 120 pounds and I was like as thin as a rail, when I looked in the mirror, I still saw my old former image of being the obese person.
Yep.
And that actually followed me. Now, not the anorexia, but the looking in the mirror and never being happy with the image staring back at me, really all the way until maybe a couple years ago is when I finally like broke it. Had a big breakthrough when my daughter was born, because that put everything else in perspective for
Yeah.
me when my daughter was born.
Yeah.
Um, but all that to say, what really changes the game is when you really start seeking, at least for me, seeking and asking God, give me your eyes. God, tell me who I am to you. I've been reading a book lately by Corey Russell called Teach Us to Pray. And you brought up some of the feelings that you were having that you write about in your book. And I think you talked about anxiety, worry, self comparison,
Yeah.
fear. And if you think about it, that is where those feelings come from thoughts.
And that negativity is really the stronghold of sinfulness.
Mm.
And what I mean by that is, give a tangible example. The last guest I had on, he specializes in helping break young men's addictions to pornography.
Mm.
And he once told me, anyone who's an addict, and I do have a somewhat addictive personality. I've had to break addictions in my life. And he said, a lot of the times why we fail in breaking our addictions is because we are treating the symptom and not the root cause. And he said, let me tell you what I mean by that.
Yeah.
An addiction, if you just try to break it by, okay, I'm just going to stop doing this, the root cause of that addiction is the feelings, the fear, the worry, the stress, the anxiety. And if you really start to get to the spiritual level of the Bible, you realize that worry is a sin. Fear is a sin, or at least leads to sinfulness. I think that's why there's so many passages in the Bible that says, fear not, be
Yeah.
courageous,
Yeah.
love. And when you start elevating your mindset to the consciousness as best we can as God, and you start viewing yourself how he sees you, that's where the real change comes from.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It's so true, and it's hard at the same time, of like there were so many moments where there's moments today, me and a couple of my close friends, like I question myself sometimes, or I am the queen of overthinking. Like always overthink every little situation. Like, should have said this, I should have done that. Oh my gosh, like this happened and that happened, and what if this happens and all of this? And I'm like, I'm so good about thinking of all the different scenarios, everything that could happen, everything that could have been better, that I could have done better, or whatever. And you get so caught up in that you don't see God's hand in it, right? And you don't see the purpose. Like, I went through the body image stuff in high school, and I went through a lot of different things, and I just remember getting so lost in the thoughts of it, and in the worry, and in the anxiety, and in the fear, that I didn't let him calm my voice or my heart. I didn't listen to his peaceful voice, and really just sit there and go, yeah, you're right, God. Like, I am overwhelmed, but you are a God that is bigger than my overwhelming feelings, right? And so you can settle my heart. Maybe I did make a mistake. Okay, I made a mistake, but you turn everything that I mess up into good and into glory for you and your kingdom. So really, I made a mistake, but that doesn't mean I am a mistake. Or, I see myself badly in the mirror, but does that mean that you didn't make me to perfection? No, you did. I just can't see it. So would you teach me how to see it? And it's really changing those things. And at the core of every single situation, one of my favorite worship songs, it's called Names by, I believe, Elevation Worship. And the first line was, you are the medicine, the only cure for everything I feel within. And I love that so much, because you really think about it. You have a cold. I just had a cold, and that's why I'm clearing my throat a lot. I lost my voice for a while and I sounded crazy. But, I just had a cold, and what did I need? Whenever I get colds, I lose my voice, and I have this cough that lasts like a couple weeks. And so immediately, once I felt the cold coming on, I had to get antibiotics to kill it, right? And to help me. So I went to the source, I went to the doctor to help me, so that I don't have this cough and have a lost voice and not able to work for a couple weeks. So I went to the source. I went to get the medicine. That's what Jesus does. He is God. God is the doctor, and his ways, his word is our prescription, right? Of like that is what helps us. His words, his voice, the Bible, that is what heals us. And it's God breathed, every word of it. And so I just love that, because it's like you are the medicine. I'm anxious, you're the answer. I feel shameful, you're the answer. I feel regret, you're the answer. I feel alone, you're the answer. I feel broken, you're the answer. I feel lost, you're the answer. It's him every single time. And so often I feel like as humans, we try to take care of it on our own, figure out the solution on our own. And we think that, you know, at the core of the situation, we could figure it out. But at the core of it, it's Jesus, and he's the answer. So, yeah.
That hits the nail on the head, because, the quote from Corey Russell's book was, those feelings of fear and anxiety and stress and pressure and overwhelm, our first reaction, and look, this is a natural human first reaction, is to look down.
Yeah.
And I even meditated on that. It's
Yeah.
not just like, oh, you look down at your feet. Like, it's like, there's an expression, hey, you look down today. It doesn't mean the person was literally looking down at their feet. It just means that you can see on their face that something isn't great going on in their life, right?
Yeah.
And his challenge was, next time you feel that, stop and look up and take it straight to God. And the reason that I bring that up is because I think that's essentially what you're saying. I've had people tell me when I share my testimony, and I'm continually trying to get better at sharing my testimony, is, hey, well, Sean, that's great, but I prayed for this in the past and it didn't work, didn't happen. And there's many things that I've prayed for in my life, and they've all been answered. It may not have been the answer I wanted, but typically everything that I've ever prayed for has been answered. And I'm fortunate because I've spoken with other church leaders, and apparently God doesn't reveal everything. And I'm not saying God reveals everything to me, but a lot of God's fingerprints on my life, it takes some hindsight, but he does reveal that. And it's such a cool feeling, and I can never express it the right way. But it's amazing when he starts revealing, like, hey, like, you went through that pain, and here's the purpose of what you went through. Look at what I just did in your life.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't have been possible without you first going through that pain and that discipline. And I bring it up because I share stuff like that, and people say, well, I've tried and it just doesn't work for me. And there's many times where I've prayed, and looking back, it's been revealed to me that, yes, I prayed and God still moved, right? Because God is a promise maker and he's a promise keeper.
Yeah.
But it's one thing to pray, and it's another thing to actually follow through on your end of the prayer. And what I mean by that is a great analogy. You can call the doctor and you can set the appointment, right? And that, to me, is as apples to apples as I can make it. This analogy is, that's kind of like the prayer, right? But you still got to get up and go to the doctor.
Yeah.
And that, to me, is, there's a beautiful verse that says, cast all your anxieties on Jesus because he cares for you.
Yeah.
Peter could have easily wrote, he cares about you, which he does, but he said he cares for you. And if you really think of that deeper meaning, is if you cast all your anxieties on him, he cares for you, which means that he's going to provide, he's going to care for you. It's one thing to say, I care about my mom, and let's say we're talking about an elderly parent, and it means something completely different when I say I care for my mom.
Yeah.
Caring about someone is a little bit more distant. I care about you, which is great. Caring for someone means that, hey, maybe my mom lives in my home now because I am her caregiver.
Yeah.
But that promise has a condition. And the condition is, because God gave us free will, we have to cast our anxieties on him. We have to lay them at his feet.
Yeah.
And that's my challenge for people who might be on the fence or are Christians but are struggling in this category. It's not something that I can truly put into words, other than you have to keep praying and seeking the answer. The door will be opened, keep
No.
knocking, but you have to come to a place in your own life where you understand what it truly means to hand it over.
Hmm.
For
So,
me, what that looked like was being quiet, was sitting still, was saying, hey, you know what? There's a lot of things in my control, namely me. I can control, with God's help, I can control myself. I'm going to be slow to anger. I'm going to cultivate a sense of patience within me. I'm going to work on the things within my control, but everything outside of that,
yeah.
that's God.
Yeah.
And when I gave up that, I'm going to, this fantasy of I can control external things, that's when God really started moving.
Yeah. That's so good. I love that. And I love just the analogies that you use there, because it really is like, it's relationship, it's not about religion, it's about relationship. Because religion says, God do this for me, God do that, God will do this, God will do that. But relationship says, no, we're in it together. Like, we're working together. He cares for me. He doesn't just care about me, right? And so it's like, also, you brought up seek and knock and it will be answered, like the door will be opened. And that's one of my favorite things in the Bible ever, of like, it's the parable of the friend at midnight, where, you're knocking and you're knocking, and the neighbor was knocking because he knew that even if it was, gonna annoy the guy living in the house or whatever, like, the guy would answer, right? It was midnight. Like, he knew, I'm just gonna keep knocking because at some point he will answer. And that's what our prayers should be. It should be, we keep knocking because we know that at some point, whether it's our timing or not, God will answer and the door will be opened for us. Will it be in the way we expected? Probably not. Will it be in the timing we expected? Probably not. But will it be in the perfect timing, in the perfect way? Absolutely, because it's in his hands. So I love that. I love that you brought that up. So good.
And like, I love having talks like this because it gets my mind in that next level of thinking. And so much of my belief system is, so much of our reality is molded in the factory of our minds.
Yes.
And from a masculine perspective, I like to say, so I've worked with a lot of young men, met a lot of young men who come from, I have a heart for kind of blue collar upbringings, or kind of people who grew up in poverty, in the projects,
Yeah.
and basically, to not sugarcoat it, a heart for people who came from violent backgrounds. It doesn't necessarily mean that their parents were violent, but neighborhoods where there's gangs and shootings. And I love those stories, those underdog stories of the people that made it out of those neighborhoods and became successful and made something of themselves. And almost every time, every person I've met from that type of background talks about their faith and talks about how God worked on their side and orchestrated things that they could have never orchestrated themselves. And it also reminds me of King David and David versus Goliath. And I bring that up because I almost like to think of my prayer life as, make it violent. Be a violent prayer warrior.
Mhm.
Be, the beauty of a hammer is that it can create a beautiful work of art. Michelangelo took a hammer on a single piece of marble and made, a lasting piece of art of King David, actually, right? But that same hammer could be taken and it could destroy that beautiful statue as well. for people who struggle with positive things, who have such a hard upbringing, I always challenge them, say, okay, I get it. You're tired of well, God is love, and if you just pray, and because I get it. Like, there's been a time period in my life where I told people, I'm going to start a James ministry. Like, faith without works is dead. Like, I went through a period in my life where I was like, I don't want your prayers. Like, I'll pray. Thank you for your concern, but like, if you're not going to do something, don't worry about it. And I'm not saying that's the right attitude either, but my point being is I do meet a lot of people who kind of get sick of the "we'll pray about it" attitude of
Mm.
some portions of the Christian church. And my challenge to them is, be destructive in your prayers. The things that you don't like, the things that are bad, the things that are of the enemy, destroy them through your prayers. Get violent with your prayer life. And I'll say, I don't believe that should be a long-term fuel or motivation, but you'd be surprised that when you get violent with your prayer life, how it starts to destroy the walls in your own heart. And then the love of God has softened you up, and you're able to flip that over and operate in more of a love mindset. At least that's what occurred for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. It's like, I mean, the Bible says it's like you're boldly approaching the throne of God, and in your prayers, you're bringing it to his feet, but not just like, hey, God, like, here's this, like, please help me. But it's like, no, God, this sucks. Like, I
Yes.
have worked, I worked at my church for 2 years with high school girls, and I was a girls director, and it was such a rewarding position to be in because you just got to have these real conversations with these girls and really help them. And that's where a lot of like the inspiration and the passion was fueled to specifically help like that teenage girl age. And what I told the girls is, listen, one thing we as girls have in common is our emotions, and we feel things, right? Good or bad or in between, all the things. And I said, you boldly approach God with those emotions. Like, tell him you're mad at him. Tell him you don't even know, like, if he's trying to do anything for your good. That does not scare God. What that does is that brings him in closer, and he says, listen, my daughter, my son, I hear you. I know you're frustrated. Do you trust that I'm turning this out for your good? And it's not the way that there was this quote I heard the other day or something where it's like, you'll know your faith by the way that you pray. So your faith, you'll see that in the way that you pray. Are you telling God, like, if you can, like, help me in this situation? Or are you saying, God, I believe that you are going to turn this situation around for good. I pray right now in Jesus' name that you would have your way and take over. Like that type of a prayer is so different than like, if you can, like, help me, or like, help me pass this test. Like, that's a very common like prayer in like school days, right? Like, can you help me? Sorry, last time I talked to you, I asked you the same thing. But it's like, talk to him, be real with him, give him those raw emotions. That's what he wants. He already knows them. He knows you're mad at him. He knows you're annoyed. He knows you're disappointed. So why are you hiding it? And also, I think, sometimes we avoid prayer. Maybe, myself speaking, I avoid prayer because I need to talk things out with people. And so like, I'll go to my mom or my dad or a mentor in my life or friend and talk to them and like work a situation out. And then I'm like, I just need to think about it and pray about it. But then I don't pray about it because I don't want to repeat it again, right? I don't want to go through, rehash the whole situation. God knows the situation. Why is that keeping me from talking to him? You don't have to feel overwhelmed by telling him, well, yesterday I went to school and then this happened and that happened. He knows exactly what happened. So just saying, God, yesterday when that happened at school, I was so frustrated. I don't even know what to do with my emotions today. Can you please help me and meet me where I'm at? Soften my heart. Like, have your way with this situation and take over. You don't need to rehash every single little thing of your life. He knows it and he sees it. So don't hide it. Don't avoid it because it's too overwhelming to talk about. but talk to him about how you really feel in the depths of your heart and like those raw and real emotions. So
Yeah. Yeah, no, I was going to say the day my daughter was born, something changed. Um, and it was one of the most spiritual, beautiful moments. When I first held her, I literally bawled like a kid. It was beautiful, and it's helped me gain a new perspective on how God sees me, because it doesn't matter what my daughter does.
yeah.
I love her more than words can describe, and then to think that our Heavenly Father loves us even more than that.
Mm.
And it's almost incomprehensible. It is incomprehensible. And one thing that I tell people, and is that God honors honesty, at
Mm.
least in my opinion. And one reason I feel like younger than most people, but it's not a comparison thing. But at 32 years old, I was able to do some of the things in my life that some people will never achieve, which it's not a toot my own horn thing. But one thing that has made a big difference to me is I was probably 25 or 26 years old when I finally caught on to this truth, was that I'm not going to lie to myself and I'm not going to lie to God. So when I look in the mirror, if I don't like the reflection, I'm not going to make an excuse. I'm going to say, like, yeah, I'm greedy, or yes, I am lazy, or yes, like, because when we start to confront the truth, that's when we can start fixing it. And the reason I bring that up is because there have been times pretty recently that I've said, like, God, like, I'm having trouble trusting you. God, I don't trust you. Help me.
Yeah.
Right now, I don't trust you. Help me trust you.
Yeah.
Show me that I can trust you. And I don't mean it. I even say I don't mean it in a challenging way. I'm just being honest
It's
with
true.
my own feelings that you already know. So I might as well tell you what I'm feeling, and
Yeah.
maybe you can help me work it out. And he will help you work it out. There
Yeah.
was some really tough stuff going on with my family life, and I was brought up with a father who's not a Christian and who didn't always give the best advice. And it's not an excuse, but it did cloud how I perceive God, right? Like, if you don't grow up with a great father, um, it's hard to perceive God differently than your parents. That's why it's so important as a parent to be a good role model for your children. But there was a moment a few months ago where I was going through a really hard time, and it wasn't really towards God. It was more towards my dad, but it was also like getting this emotion out. And I broke down, and I was like walking on my treadmill. I was listening to worship music, and I started thinking, and I started speaking and praying on the treadmill. And I was coming to terms with all these like demons that I grew up with as a kid. And I kid you not, I just started saying, like, I'm bawling my eyes out, and I'm saying, like, I hate you. Like, there was a part of me that hated God in a way. I don't have the right words to really describe it. And I fell face flat on my treadmill, just crying and praying. And it takes a lot of vulnerability even for me to share this, but I think it's such an important moment. Um, and I think a lot of people have had those same feelings, and maybe we're afraid to express it, because it takes a lot of something, a lot of faith to say, like, God, yeah, there's a part of me that hates you for this situation, that I know that you could snap your fingers and fix it. And obviously you're not. Why do you want me to go through this? Why do I have to go through all this pain? Why do I have to watch my family split apart at the seams, while at the same time I'm having these financial troubles, and at the same time XYZ is going on, and I don't know what to do, and I hate you.
Mm.
And immediately After a few moments, I stopped crying. I picked myself back up, and he was there.
Yeah.
But that's the brutal honesty it takes.
Mhm. It is. Yeah. It's so powerful, and that's when the breakthrough happens, you know? It's when you're willing to get on your knees and cry your heart out and say, "Everything I believe you know, is taken over me, but I want you to have your way and
Yeah.
and make your way in my life," and you will. But that's the necessary piece. It's the willingness to be real and raw with God and know that he sees you fully and completely, and regardless of who you are, what you've done, what people have said about you or done to you, like, you are a child of God, and that is the higher truth. There's lowercase t truth, capital
Yep.
T truth. Truths that we adopt, the ultimate truth. God's truth is the ultimate truth, and that's the difference. So I love
Well, I know that you have a busy afternoon.
it.
I, I, I always like to let my guests in. And one thing that I love about your story is one thing about the younger generation and children in general. Jesus talked about it, the Bible talks about, have faith like a child, is they're more open and vulnerable with their emotions. They're
Mm,
less guarded than an adult.
yeah.
Do you have any last advice, or if parting words for a young teenage girl or a parent struggling with a young teenage girl, um, that you think could help them?
Yeah. I would say be real. Be real with the people you trust, and um, you know, talking to people that you would be willing to trade places with in the area that they're advising you. So, for me that was my mom, and she would give me input and advice, and I looked up to her, I admired her, and so I would be willing to trade places with her on the way that she lived her life. And
Hmm.
so I would take her advice, and I would trust her with opening my heart to her. I think it's easy as a teenage girl to open your heart or give your emotions and talk about everything to everyone. And, at the end of the day, it's who are those people that you trust? Who are those people that you would be willing to switch places with? And who are those people that you can be real with and that they could be real back to you? And if you're a parent, my suggestion is be real. Be real with your kids. They want to know that you're not this superhuman person that never went through life, but that you are a human and you've gone through it and you know what it feels like. And no matter what our age, no matter if we're, what season we're in, or if we're a guy or if we're a girl, like, the common thing is that we're all humans and we all share that, and we have emotions, and emotions are meant to be felt. They're not meant to be our permanent home. They're meant to be passed through. And so we have to pass through our emotions, walk through them, but not alone, with the community of people that love us and with God that loves us even more. So
I love that. Alex, thank you so much for coming on.
thank
I
you.
definitely think this is deserving of a part two.
I agree.
And
Let's do it.
um, if anyone's watching this and they're interested in writing a book or getting in touch with you just to learn more about your story, is there someplace they can go, or an email address you want to put out there to share?
Yeah, you guys can go to Instagram. My Instagram is the Alex Noelle. So the word the Alex and then Noelle. And you could reach out to me there and connect and get all the information. And then I have a website, daughterministries.com. It's a little bit under construct or in construction right now, but you can find some more info there and get more information. So
I love it, and I'll put links to your Instagram on the post. So awesome! Thank you so much.
awesome. Thank you, Sean. Appreciate it.
If you enjoy my podcast, please support me by buying my book, Resonate Principles of Peak Performance, available on Amazon and at theresonatebook.com. Also, please be sure to like, subscribe, and share my page. Thank you.